hybrid. Yeah. The hybrid. Yeah. The hybrid. Yeah. The hybrid. The hybrid.
Did anybody listen to our first episode?
My mother said it sounded great.
Good. All right, everybody. Welcome back for the second installment of The Hybrid. I'm Erik Gundersen, and I'm here with my co-host and fellow recovering cannabis regulator, Shawn Collins. Today, we're taking a step back, looking beyond the headlines, beyond the regulations and market trends to ask a deeper question. What happens when the reason we began something no longer seems necessary? Cannabis legalization in this country began with a simple, powerful premise that people who are sick, suffering, or out of options should have the right to access a plant that may actually help them. The idea, medical cannabis, rooted in compassion, patient autonomy, and defiance of stigma, was the moral and political foundation for the entire modern cannabis movement. By now, with more than half the country living in states where cannabis is legal for adult use, the foundation seems to be shifting. In a world where anyone over 21 can walk into a dispensary and buy cannabis, where does that leave state medical programs? Are they still essential? Do we even need them? Or are we witnessing the quiet fading of something that was once revolutionary? This isn't just a policy question. It's a question about identity, purpose, and evolution, about whether a system built to serve the vulnerable can or should continue to exist in a marketplace increasingly driven by scale, convenience, and consumer demand. It's about whether we believe medicine is defined by intent, why someone uses a product, or by the structure we build around it, and what happens to patients when those structures disappear. So make no mistake, in some states, this is already happening. Medical markets are being reduced, consolidated, or folded into adult use frameworks. Patient registries are shrinking, specialized products are going to become harder to find, and the actual patients these programs are originally designed could certainly feel like they're being left behind. And yet there's also evolution, right? In some places, we're seeing innovation in medical access, research, and product design. We're seeing states grapple with how to keep medical programs relevant in a world that increasingly doesn't distinguish between wellness and recreation. So today we really want to talk about, is there a need for medical versus adult use cannabis? What do patients actually need from the systems that we've built for them? Because at the end of the day, it's not just about convenience or markets or laws. So let's begin with something that might seem obvious to many listeners here, but still bears repeating. There is no biological difference between medical cannabis plants and adult use cannabis plants. It's the same plant. The distinction isn't in the botany. It's in the systems that we build around it. So having said that, I remember having to say out loud in front of the Maine legislature early in my time leading the Office of Cannabis Policy, and it still catches people off guard. So with that in mind, Shawn, welcome.
Hey.
When adult use markets are fully up and running, when access is broad and stigma is lowered, do we still need to separate medical programs from adult use programs, or are we holding on to something that the market and maybe the public has already moved past?
Yeah, we have to separate them. I think we have to separate them. I think for a number of reasons. One, these are patients. They need medicine. They're accessing medicine as part of a care regimen. So yeah, and I think, and I'm glad you touched on it as far as a lot of our adult use programs exist because medical came first. And so in that sense, any entrepreneur, anyone that's 21 or over that's accessing adult use cannabis is really standing on the shoulder of patients and providers that took a giant risk pushing for legalization of medical products. And if medical was an entry point to prove a concept, that I think you look around at your adult use markets and they've proven that concept successfully, but there is still a very necessary distinction between what is medical cannabis and what is adult use cannabis, and what is a consumer good versus what is medicine. And that's where I think the distinction needs to drive maybe a darker, brighter line between the markets, right? Like I think dosing, products, um, I would argue, and I've argued publicly many times, better integration into traditional medicine. Like there are so many reasons that medical cannabis should stand differentiated from an adult use marketplace, and they're valid. They're valid to the patients that have self-medicated or sort of developed their care regime left to their own devices, and that's a shame. I think that's not a mistake, but that's an error or a missed opportunity on behalf of government in some cases. But I would also say probably traditional medicine for that matter too. But yeah, I think there's still a need for the two markets to coexist in some way, but also to be different and differentiated. And yeah, but I think you've noted, I think in your opening remarks, which by the way, nailed it. Like what a stump speech. There's been a quiet fading, and I think that's true. And you know that could be explained too. And I'm sure you've seen a little bit in Maine and other jurisdictions that you've worked in, where some people were simply using the medical program as an access point, right? Like they're getting on the medical program for a number of reasons. One, it's tax free, and they might buy enough or purchase enough in bulk that there's value to being in the medical program. That's not medical. I'm sorry.
And a lot of people have a hard time coming to like that realization too.
Yeah.
I mean, look, the patient rolls in most states that legalize adult use are going to go down because these medicals came first, and it became the only way to access some type of regulated product, whether it was for convenience or for safety reasons, or because they were just not willing to call their dealer anymore. And
Right.
a lot of those early medical states, Maine is 100% one of them, was just this like program that was put together with very little oversight, very little transparency, this libertarian model way of doing things, of self-policing, very little resources from the state, yet it created this huge industry. I think when I took over at the Office of Cannabis Policy, Maine, a population of 1.3 million people, we had like 130, 140, maybe it was 150,000 medical patients. So just like doing the math, certainly when we're talking about, we want medical cannabis to serve a purpose for the most vulnerable, the people that need it, the patients that actually use it to treat symptoms. It's not 150,000 people in Maine. We don't have
Right.
we don't
Yeah.
have a sickly population up here. And I think the rolls now sit around 70 or 80,000, which
Still a good number. That's still a good amount.
still is a good number, but I think Maine is also a unique case because we had a long-standing medical program, a caregiver program, which is wrapped up in this culture almost. So even if you had somebody that was using it for recreational purposes, maybe they've made relationships with a caregiver, they follow a certain brand, it became part of their routine. The obstacles to getting a patient card, there really aren't any here. So, or maybe the other thing is we still have huge pockets of the state that don't have adult use or access to adult use, which could be another driving force. But I think I agree with you in the sense that there definitely needs to be space for medical cannabis. I think it should be for those that actually need it as medicine. I think we still have a lot of patients in these states that aren't necessarily using it for medical reasons, more adult use reasons or recreational reasons, and they're staying in that space for whatever reason. But I might differ from you a little bit. I know you're kind of passionate about this stuff, but I think where you really need to differentiate the two is at the point of retail. And I would love it if you push back on me, if you think it should be broader than that, if you think it should be full supply chain. We can talk about integrating it into traditional medicine, but at the end of the day, like I realized there was a difference between a consumer and a patient. And I primarily thought about that in their experience purchasing their medicine should be and look much different than a consumer what their experience looks like purchasing cannabis for recreation. Um, so that's really where I find there needs to be a clear delineation of the two. Um, I don't know how you feel about it, but some states, like in Maine, there's two distinct supply chains, which just baffles my mind. And
No, that's
maybe that,
dumb.
yeah, maybe there is a policy reason, but I just haven't been convinced of it. Again, going back to the beautiful monologue that I opened with, like I seriously had to have that conversation. There isn't a difference between medical cannabis plants and adult use cannabis plants. There isn't a difference between a medical pre-roll and a recreational or adult use pre-roll, unless you're talking about states that have different product requirements, like a higher THC content for those products in a medical market. I don't know. I mean, as far as the point of retail, I think is where states are headed. It makes sense from like a business standpoint to have one supply chain, to make it economically viable, well, as much as we can. Um, so we can still continue to have medical products, because if it doesn't work on the front end, it's certainly not going to make it to retail, right? So
I agree with you. I agree with 90-ish% of that. I would probably back it out toward the product manufacturing level a little bit. Around, I think there are patients that are legitimately dosing in a manner that would require specialized products, and so in that sense, I would say to your earlier point, a cannabis plant um, is not a medical plant or an adult use plant. Its fate is not determined upon its cloning or clipping. Like it's so if you're popping seeds, you're not popping medical or adult use seeds. It's seeds. In that sense, even strains for that matter, like even specific strains, some might be marketed more toward a medical patient. So some of your higher CBD strains, like a Charlotte's Web or something. But even that, like a consumer may still want that for just a mild experience. So they should have a choice. As you get to the product manufacturing, though, I would say especially around dosing. But if you really want to legitimize your medical program, and this is where I'm going to probably piss some people off, and if that's the case, my email is Erik at whatever the rest of your email address is. What I would say is there should be a limitation on product variety in the medical system. I don't know any doctor, legitimate doctor, that would prescribe basically a permission slip to go shopping and say, good luck out there, go get sugary gummies, go get a brownie, right? Like, and I'm sort of probably overly making the market more generic than it really is. It's far more intricate, but I think patients need to be treated as patients and actually prescribed medicine. In that sense, I think it's got to take a more traditional medical approach around dosing and delivery. And that could still be things like topicals and ointments. It could also be capsules and things of that nature. That said, I do think the retail distinction is ultimately where that, all things being equal, where that medical product can be a medical or adult use inventory choice. And what that does, though, and this is where I think we need to think long-term, big picture, is it frankly would blow wide open your access to medicine. Because right now, I'll use the Massachusetts example just because I'm most familiar with it. We have adult use standalone retail stores, and we have co-located medical and adult use stores, and we have medical stores. There are far more adult use only stores that could just as easily dispense, because again, it's the same retail procedure. It's point of sale essentially. And that would blow wide open your medical market, I think, to the point where, in a good way though, which is better access. And obviously more competition brings down price. And so that's obviously going to be a cost consideration for patients. And more competition in the market, I think, is ultimately a good thing long-term for the market, notwithstanding the small pain points you'd have as that growth occurs and as potential consolidation happens. But yeah, I would just back it out one more step around the product manufacturing piece. I would also though, this is where I think vertical integration in the medical system is a mistake, because I think while expensive to get into and does control your supply chain, I think it hinders innovation. And I think if you had a standalone product manufacturer that could actually produce medical product, I think that's a good thing for the market. But I would just simply say that for that to happen, I think the medical system needs to take itself more seriously and mature.
Yeah, I would agree with that. You make an interesting point though, and I
I
totally agree with
usually
you.
do. Yep.
If you're going to have a medical program, let's make it more medical.
Yep.
Back it out the manufacturer for these very specialized medicines. Can a manufacturer sustain itself making very specialized products like that on a case by case basis? So that's where the problem is. That's where the problem is.
Not in a traditional. Well, this is where I think, as I mentioned, maturing and growing up, this is where the entire industry, I think, needs to come to a reality check a little bit, which is the future is going to get more, well, sadly, expensive. But if you're talking medicine, like let's talk true medicine, like let's talk FDA level clinical trial prepared and ready medicine, your manufacturing process has got to get a lot more rigid and serious to the point where though you can start to replicate things. You can placebo things, which means you can dose with precision. Like if you want to talk true medicine, like we're talking lab coats. We're not like that's a very expensive proposition. Um, and
Yeah,
I
that's
it's
a big
I don't know a lot of small business drug manufacturers
that's what I'm saying. That's a big problem for these operators that are in medical programs or trying to operate in medical programs. I
for sure.
mean, you're talking this. We had this conversation when it looked like cannabis might actually move to Schedule 3. What did that mean for state medical and adult use programs? I mean, I stand by the fact it meant very little from an operational standpoint. You were going to have big pharma come in, and they were the only ones that have the money, have the resources, the infrastructure to actually bring a cannabis medicine to market through the FDA pathways. Um, And at the end of the day, what does that mean for those people that you and I are sitting here saying are the most important, like the ones that truly need this medicine to treat their symptoms, to increase their quality of life? What does that mean for the caregiver in Maine that's had that relationship? Does that keep going, or do they actually go to the pharmacy, um, and pick up the drug that has gone through those pathways, that have had the lab coats, the lab coats actually testing it, analyzing it, making sure that it's properly formulated versus the caregiver in Maine? Um, it sounds like what we're saying is if we want medical cannabis to actually operate functionally the way that we're talking about it, is like it has to go through federal federal channels.
Yeah. Well, in that sense, though, that gets back to your point about retail and point of sale differentiation. That becomes your Walgreens CVS model where I can get my higher potency prescription drugs from the pharmacist. But in that example, I can ask the pharmacist questions. The pharmacist can also look at drug interactions and say, wait a minute, these two drugs don't interact well together, or these are the side effects that you can expect. Like there's a whole there's a whole host of reasons that drugs go through those very stringent tests, and they should, because we need to know what we're getting ourselves into. Uh, and then the other thing I'll add to that, though, is to get into that system, there's benefits to that. Insurance reimbursements are huge. Medicare and Medicaid getting involved in this game, the ability to actually conduct really robust research across age populations and across um, you know different body compositions and different pre-existing conditions, and because at the end of the day, none of us present to a doctor or the pharmacy with the same set of. We have similar symptoms, but we don't present with the same set of other dynamics. So, my upbringing, my cultural history, like there's a lot that goes into treating a patient that I'll never understand because I didn't go to medical school. But right now, what we have is basically, and I hate to say it, it's permission slip to go shopping. And a lot of times patients are left to their own devices to figure out what product type is best for me. Is it tinctures? Should I smoke combustible? Should I vape flower? Should I vape oil? All of that stuff is really intimidating. Think about the senior citizen. The other thing I think you mentioned patient roles and sort of the structure and some of the growth or decline of our programs. You know, medical cannabis is serving a lot of palliative care and hospice care in a lot of jurisdictions across the country. And so that end of life care is more like sort of pain management. And I think there's real value to that where there's compassion in that as well. And I think that's yet another reason why our medical programs should have durability and have a role to play in society. But I'll just reinforce again that I think for medical programs to be fully sustainable, I think they need to fully integrate into our healthcare systems. And that's electronic medical records. That is health insurance reimbursements, and like all of those things just legitimize that. And I think credit would be due to the patients that have come before you and I, and sort of our programs were established before you and I ever took office, so to speak. So we inherited systems. I think the two of us did our best, therefore, to improve those systems for the benefit of patients. But as you know, too, change could be contentious at times. I know I took a lot of grief from our medical patients for things throughout my tenure. Our application process was sluggish at first. There was a lot of delays in just going from patient certification to actually registering with our program. And it was clunky. And we put a lot of time and energy into improving it. But we just tried to be good stewards of a program that, again, I didn't build. I didn't form it, but it did grow. I'm proud of the fact it grew under our auspices once it came over to the commission. But for a little bit there, it was bumpy road. So
yeah, believe me.
I don't know. What's Maine's program like? It seems like it's fully integrated and.
Yeah, no, every gray hair I have on my head was from trying to bring what I thought was positive change to the state's medical program up here in Maine. Yeah. I mean, look, what you're saying is true. And part of me, all of me understood there was a place for a medical program, even though going back, I saw it more through let's make sure the retail experience and the products are available for these folks that truly need it. But when I took over, Maine has a caregiver program, basically individuals that were allowed to service or allowed to grow and produce product and sell to a few number of patients. And right before I took over, that whole model got commercialized. There was big changes, but it was still in this libertarian model where there's no oversight. The state didn't have any enforcement mechanisms to make sure that people were staying in the bounds of what was required by law and regulations. I didn't get a lot of grief from the patients for all of the changes that I proposed in my time there. It was mostly from the caregivers, and I totally get it. To your point, change is tough. They had a lot of money invested. It was their business. It's how they fed their family. But fundamentally, the picture of cannabis in Maine still isn't that great. And what I mean by that is we're still operating in a world where we have an adult use program, a tax and regulate program, and we have a freewheeling medical program. And everybody up here uses the term wild, wild west. I'm sure others in their home states have used that same term. It's like oil and water. So if you're trying to get the picture of cannabis right in your state, it can be very difficult to have, again, a tax and regulated system running alongside this libertarian model of self-policing and very little transparency and accountability. So
they're not the same thing. I think that's like ultimately like a medical product is not the same thing as a consumer good. And I think you probably like the consumer, the patient has different standards or expectations around what they might be getting. I would say there's different form factors as well at some point, as far as, again, think about topicals, ointments, capsules, again, traditional medical delivery. But then consumer goods, like a adult use product, can be a brownie. Like I can make a choice. I might want a beverage. I might want flour that just because I like the social aspect of consuming cannabis. And that's where I just think the two markets, they are oil and water. They're different. They're not like diametrically opposed. And that's where I think, to your earlier point on the production side, can have some synergies and some sort of pathways that are identical, or even, again, a plant is a plant is a plant is a plant is a plant. And that's where I think the market still has a long way to go and a long way to normalize from a production standpoint. But I'll also add, that's where the feds have a role to play, and they haven't played it, is around things like supply chains, is around things like production standards and expectations. And again, I would say on the drug side especially, is around drug approvals. Because certain conditions that would qualify for medical access would require different forms of medicine. And that's true, especially you think about some of the neurological things that cannabis can be valuable for, or the physical things that cannabis can be valuable for. And then lastly, of course, is sort of the therapeutic aspect, which might have less stringent standards, but still should have at least some form of oversight. But at the end of the day, like, what I'm really impressed by in the cannabis industry is the rapid pace of innovation. Like, there's product forms out there that I never even imagined would be possible. And that's really interesting to me from like an economic standpoint of like, are people really buying that crap? Or like, who came up with that? That's interesting. But then I'm also wondering, like, all right, let's see what happens. Let's see where it goes. But that curiosity should never really integrate into our medical system. Like, God forbid a regulator looks at medicine and goes, let's see what happens. Let's see if it sells. Like that should give everybody some heartburn that maybe cannabis would treat. But I just think that's sort of that's where I differentiate the two markets. But there is a lot of critique, and you started at this point where the medical programs that have come before adult use have been cannibalized. That tends to be true. But I think there's good reason for that, and there's at least an explanation for that. Maybe not good reason. There's an explanation for that in a lot of instances, which is that, like I said earlier, a lot of people have been using a medical program simply for access. Some people enjoy the legal protections that a medical program grants you. And then some people at some point choose not to medicate through the medical market, but instead choose to just simply forego those protections because they don't want to be on a list. I don't want to be registered with the state. I don't need an ID in my wallet that shows them a medical patient. I don't. Quick anecdote, one of the things that when we took over the program was we mailed out physical registration cards. And on the return address, it said Cannabis Control Commission. And we had some patients call and say, can you please never mail me anything again? Like, what if my landlord gets my mail and sees that I'm getting mail from the Cannabis Control Commission, or that I'm a medical cannabis patient? I'm not allowed to have that in my lease forbids cannabis. Or what if my roommate sees it, or my spouse or my partner, or like, and it occurred to me that like just simply the return address, that tells you, that reveals big time the stigma still exists. And society is not necessarily caught up. But very quickly, by the way, we changed the return address. But it was for that reason. I don't know if that would have occurred to you, but it certainly didn't to me. Here I am thinking, in case this thing gets lost, mail it back to us. But that was a good reinforcement to me that like you're playing with people's rights, you're playing with people's medicine. And so, take a beat, think about it, think critically about it. But also, the other takeaway for me was engage your medical patients. Find out what system they want, they need. And also engage your stakeholders as far as providers too. Because I don't know about how Maine has been, but there's not a long list of folks in the medical profession looking to get into the medical cannabis certification and registration game. So yeah, they tend to be the outliers in the medical profession, which is It's a shame because I think there's a real integration that can happen if done effectively.
Yeah, to take that full leap to what you're saying, to fully integrate into traditional medicine or to make it more legitimate of a medical program, then you would need some of those individuals coming into that space. I mean, that's like the very first touch point for patients within a medical program. And it's funny that you bring that up too, because I don't want to say that they're bad actors, but you see some funny business with those individuals in every state that certify or prescribe those cards. I remember early
Yeah.
on, we ran into our highest earner. I don't know if you call it the highest earner, like the individual that issued the most cards, but they were on like a 15, 16, 17 card a day pace. You're like, you have time to actually go through these requirements that are set out in law and regulations. Like you need to do an interview, you need to ask these questions, you need to understand the medical history, you need to do all. Do you have enough time in the day to be able to do that for 17 people, and maybe you're working 10 hours a day? Like you're obviously not going through all of the requirements.
Mhm.
You're not being thorough. Uh, a little bit just disingenuous. Like a good way to make money, sure, but like you realize at the end of the day you're like hurting the medical program.
You're certainly hurting the legitimacy of it and the
Yes.
reputation of it, the credibility of it. And I don't know about you, but I don't tend to look for my doctor on Groupon where I can get a good discount to see the doctor. Um, but that's, yeah, I think that's part of the challenge is that legitimacy. And this is sort of the healthcare background that I bring, I thought at least, to the cannabis program was there are very few relationships in one's life more meaningful and more intimate than your provider patient relationship. And I say that as someone who, as an attorney who has the attorney client relationship, like though your trust, your confidence, your health and well being are literally in this individual's hands. And you're sharing with them again, like all the pain points that you would have, and the amount of conditions that people deal with, be it physical, emotional, mental, etc., that a provider is expected and has a duty of care to tend to. It's it blows my mind that we still have a system like we do, which is more transactional than anything. But it is a singular transaction. Like this person is not treating my uh, I'm trying to think of like a sort of an ongoing like my they might be treating my anxiety or my sleep, but they're not treating my cholesterol or my like you name sort of the other things that people deal with, um, my allergies and other like there's so many things that a primary care physician sort of should serve as sort of a gatekeeper to my entire care access team. And then I have just sitting out here as an outlier, like to your point, like the one doctor or NP or physician assistant that I met for a minute or 10 minutes. And like, what do you do at that point where you, like, do you tell your primary care physician, like, oh, by the way, I'm also utilizing like these other benefits? Or like, that's again, you're still admitting essentially to what? To like to drug use, which is just bizarre to me that that stigma still exists. And like, the sort of look of judgment of like, do you drink? Socially, I guess. Yeah, I mean, not a lot, but socially. Okay. Do you use drugs, including cannabis? It's like, yeah, but like as a medical patient, like, interesting. Check. It's like, great. Now I'm on a list. Like now, then what do you do? Again, like the whole thing's just sort of, it's bizarre to me that that's a system that anyone would ever imagine long term.
Yeah. And the complication here too is like I think states that believe that they should continue to have a medical program, and I think we both agree that there is a space for that. Um, Need to make improvements in these areas until there's movement at the federal level where we start to see the stigma come down and some of this stuff normalized around cannabis as a medicine, to be able to see the progress that we're talking about now. But the problem is like added regulations or forcing operators to do certain things um, can make the economics of it that much more difficult
So yeah,
in a
yeah,
landscape that's already incredibly difficult. Um, so it's a challenging problem. It's difficult. States are starting to come up with different ways of doing this. You see some that still have siloed supply chains. You see some that have,
mhm,
I think, in my opinion, the smartest way is merge them together, and then what we're saying, differentiate those at the point of retail while having some product allowances for med patients. But at the end of the day, I think we're kind of nibbling around the edges here around the integrity of the program itself, to make sure that it's in place for the purpose uh, that it's there for. Um, and in order to do that, I don't know if it makes a lot of sense economically. That's why we continue to see a lot of these loosey goosey medical programs. Um, so it's a tough one, but
yeah.
can
Loosey goosey.
conversation
I feel like that's yeah, that's a legal standard. I think. Yeah,
it is when you have two young kids. I'm surprised that's the first. Anyway, we can move past that. Loosey goosey, we can revisit that.
yeah,
But with that, it's certainly a conversation that's going to continue in cannabis agencies across the country. But
Are
again,
you seeing like any actual migration or like I know again a lot of your work brings you to other states and um, uh, are you seeing more harmony? Like, is there a trend that is headed in the right direction, or is this something you think that like it needs to break or it needs to bend before there's sort of a long term? I mean, I'm seeing some models out there on the like on the care side that I think are becoming more traditional medicine, like with a meaningful relationship between a provider, treating specialized like oncologists and other like professionals that are. It seems like it's integrating the care around the specific ailment, but also it's getting closer and closer to like an insurance model, which I think is really compelling and interesting. Like they're proving concept, but what about on like the regulatory side? Are there examples or things that you're seeing that are that look like progress at least, or like are we just sort of stuck here?
no, I think on the regulatory side, we're seeing large leaps, progressive leaps around what most importantly access for patients, especially for states that come in with adult use. Where I think it's lagging is where you're saying you're seeing progress, which is on the actual care side, which I think that's lagging behind, at least in the states that I'm operating in. Um, the regulatory side, again, we're talking about a lot of those early states had those siloed programs and it was just very difficult. Why are we having two different regulatory programs for the same plant? You see states like Maryland that have one supply chain, but
Hmm.
understand a patient is a patient and have laws and regulations in place to allow patients the space to access their medicine the way they want to. There's conversations in Minnesota right now with this burgeoning adult use program where hopefully we get licenses or they get licenses out the door in the very near future. But what is going to happen to the medical program, the patients in Minnesota? Well, they have a medical endorsement where if you have an adult use brick and mortar store, you can sell adult use. But if you jump through or go through a couple more regulatory hoops, now you're in a place where not only can you service the general population, but you can also serve the patients, which I think is a great model because you know the footprint of adult use retail is going to far exceed any footprint for medical. So how do we make sure that patients get access to their medicine? You allow pathways for that infrastructure that's going to exist to be able to get that medicine in the hands of the patients that need it most. So I think on the regulatory side, things are going well. We're making progress. Um, access really being the most important piece there, but we're still kind of falling back into the trap of um, the legitimacy, the doctor patient relationship, um, the
Yeah,
insurance integrating it into traditional medicine. I think I agree with you. That would be fabulous um, for the medical population across the country. I think that's a no-brainer. The reasons are obvious, but I still think to get to that day, I think we're still a ways out.
And, there's some interesting, I don't know if it's irony, but if you fast forward 20 years, you see in the emergence of markets that the attention, the news, the money, like the capital money, as soon as there's the introduction of an adult use marketplace, like it just sort of funnels over to that marketplace. Like I want to stand up my adult use retail store. And like some people are choosing to actually abandon medical for the sake of adult use. But if you were to follow the money in the long game, to me, like medical patients are reliable. And this is sort of sad in some ways. Like they're reliable customers. And if you get that insurance reimbursement, that's guaranteed payment. And like all of the infrastructure around our medical system is a good economy. And I hate to think of our care delivery model as an economy, but it's such a major component and segment of our economy that there's financial elements to it. Of course, it's a business, but it's a good business. And so this like migration and sort of this sprint over to the adult use market, I hate to call it short-sighted because I think there's reason for it. There's perfect and very smart people, smarter than me, are making that financial choice. But I think if you were to stick out the medical game in a long-term sense and really devote yourself to that marketplace, there's a payoff at the end. But then I'd also add, like, you can do good and do well at the same time. I do think I do not believe that cannabis is a curative drug. I think it's therapeutic. I think there's obviously therapeutic value. I think there's therapeutic efficacy. And I think it has a role to play in a larger, more robust care model with drugs, like actual prescription drugs that do cure things or treat things, again, around oncology, around palliative care. I think it can be produced cheaper. I think it can be produced better and has lower, lesser side effects than some of the drugs that people are taking today. And in that sense, back to your original question, that's why I think it has staying power in a very long term. But yeah, I think right now you're seeing, as soon as adult use comes along, there is just like a rapid migration over. And again, I think that's short-term value, not long-term.
Well, I don't know about short-term value. Certainly, if you're in the business of selling cannabis, you're going to
Sure.
go where there are more consumers. And if you go to the adult use market, you open yourself up to a lot of people. But I think you make an interesting point for staying power and long term. Like when there's federal legalization, that's going to flip everything on its head. Who knows what the world's going to look like a few years after there are open borders here, and we're talking about a national market. But
Mhm.
as far as like the patient, I would hope and I would think that if you have if you're selling medicine to a patient, that relationship looks a lot different and is much deeper than if I'm just going in to buy a pre-roll from a bud tender.
Right.
Um,
I guess that's from thinking about from the economy standpoint, though, I would say you stay in your lane, you make your pre-rolls, I'll patent a drug, and we'll see which one of us has a boat at the end of it.
Fair. I think we know
And
who's going to have the boat.
well, sure. I think we also just found a clip for our social media.
There you go. I like
So
boats. All right. Well, Shawn, with that, let's go to a lighter note here. We always talk about we always talk about trying to insert some fun humor, pop culture stuff. And in honor of the upcoming NFL draft, I am a huge NFL fan. I'm a huge Patriots fan. Patriots season ticket holder.
there go so many followers.
Drake May is the best quarterback to ever walk this earth. Um, I thought we should do a cannabis related draft, but beforehand, because you must be a Patriots fan, yeah?
Sure. I don't know if I would. It's pretty high on Drake May. Really high on Drake May.
He's my guy. What am I supposed to say? That's my
Hopefully
guy.
you can play offensive line.
Who? Well, okay. So there's my question. Like, what are the Patriots going to do at number 4?
And hopefully.
You think so?
I don't think anyone that I'd want is going to be there.
And it's been like a roller coaster. It's kind
Yeah.
of like
Well, when the Cleveland Browns and the New York Giants are picking ahead of you, things are about to get weird. So,
All right. So for this iteration of the NFL draft, we'll do the cannabis draft, where we'll do the first 4 picks. We'll rotate between Shawn and myself. But what we're drafting here are individuals, celebrities, fictional characters that should be in the cannabis game, but are currently not. So you're drafting an individual, a character, a celebrity, an athlete, whatever, that hasn't entered this space with a brand or promoting, that you think would be a gold mine in the cannabis space. Does that make sense?
it does.
All
I don't know
right.
if it makes sense to the listener, but I think once we get into it, it'll make a little bit more sense. I get the concept.
You get the
And so these people are, just so I'm clear on the rules as I look for loopholes in said rules. They are not even like, they're just not around cannabis. So like like Snoop Dogg's out.
Snoop Dogg's out.
So for those of you that fell for our April Fool's Instagram joke, Snoop Dogg is not part of this segment and will not be joining us. But so Snoop Dogg's out, Cheech and Chong are out. So all right.
Yeah,
Cool.
I hope you are in a good space, because I think before we did agree that you're going to have the first pick.
Yeah, I'm ready to go with the first pick at least. We'll see where again. You're the Browns, you're the Giants. I guess that makes me the Titans, which is not so great either. But anyway, so we ready for me to go then? Am I on the clock?
With the first pick of the whatever you want to call this draft,
I feel like I have to boo you as you're Roger Goodell right now.
Shawn Collins selects.
So I get, how many minutes do I get on the clock? I'm thinking about trading the pick. I have some options
You
here.
literally have 3 seconds before we move on.
Oh, beautiful. That's great. I would go first pick, first overall pick. I am going Oprah. Anything that woman touches turns to gold.
To gold. There you go. That makes sense.
And also, this would probably rile some of the regulators in the space, but like, you get a free pre-roll, you get a pre-roll. Like,
that's where I thought you were going with it.
Yeah, but I think also like her book club, every year she puts out like that Christmas list of like, here's my favorites. Like, and think about the like untapped market potential that she would just.
The suburban moms everywhere.
so like, first overall pick, I'd say Oprah, hands down, 100%.
Man, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Now I'm second guessing my pick.
You are on the clock.
With the second pick of the whatever you want to call this draft, sticking with the NFL and football theme, one of my favorite NFL players and athletes that's not a New England Patriot, Marshawn Lynch.
Okay. All right.
So everybody knows Ricky Williams is in the game, Al Harrington, the NBA player. But if we're talking about athletes, if you don't know who Marshawn Lynch is, this guy seems like the most fun guy to be around. He used to talk about taking shots of Hennessy before NFL games, has this weird addiction to Skittles, is absolutely freaking hilarious. I just think he would be fabulous getting into the cannabis space. It would be hard not to like him. It would be hard not to like whatever he was associated with, making it fun. So if you know Marshawn Lynch, you're probably like, yeah, Erik, that's a pretty good pick. Maybe not at number 2. But I did it. But if you don't, if you Google Marshawn Lynch and see some of his clips, both on the NFL field, but also just as a personality, yeah, I'm going to go Marshawn Lynch and not feel bad about it.
I think it's a good choice. I think I'm just here so I don't get fined. Like, he's got the Pacific Northwest. He's got Oakland. Like, he's got some roots everywhere. It's a great pick. A little bit of a reach at 2.
Yeah.
Not gonna lie. A little bit of a reach at 2. But hey, maybe it's team need. You know, I'm not Mel Kiper, but
I got my guy. I got my guy.
Sticking with my theme, so I'm on the clock again. I assume at 3. This one might throw some people, but I swear to you, I have a rationale. Pope Francis.
It's deep.
Because he has such a flock that if he said, we have Eucharist, we have wine, and now you may also get your Pope Francis pre-rolls. Again, like I can get the whole like all the Christians. I mean, come on. Think about the season tickets. Think about the jersey sales.
So good.
Yeah.
That's
So I'm not saying, to be clear, that everything he touches turns to gold. They have plenty of gold in the Catholic Church as well, but also the senior citizens, again, untapped market. Like, so I got Oprah, I got Pope Francis. I think I'm building a juggernaut. So
yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Your roster's looking pretty good there with Oprah and the Pope. Not to be honest,
also Oprah in the driver's seat over the Pope too. Like talk about some humble pie.
Not the direction I thought you were gonna go in.
Hey, I keep you guessing. Yeah, I told you I was looking for loopholes. So
I got a pretty good one here. So with the 4th pick in the whatever you want to call this cannabis draft, I'm going with Jack Sparrow of the Pirates of the Caribbean. Also, yeah, I mean, the guy made rum popular. He can make cannabis popular. But to kind of steal some of your thunder, I'm riding with the Disney, the Disney angle.
Seriously, yeah.
So you got Mad Reach, you got a guy that could probably use a little bit of cannabis. Just another interesting fella, but again, just riding the Disney brand. Let's go.
So here's my knock on you.
Okay, I'm sure you got one.
Man,
because everybody's taking this draft so serious, right?
Appealing to kids, though. What are we doing?
You're literally trying to win this draft, right?
What appealing to kids? How dare you? Shame.
My goodness. Pirates, I guess. Yeah, I guess pirates are both.
You literally plug Disney like a half dozen times. Like, what do you?
Listen, there's those. Not my flavor of type of people, but there are adult Disney folks out there. All right, so just to be quite honest, I put literally 30 seconds of thought into this draft.
So the other reason I'm a little upset about it is
you've been planning this for like weeks, it seems like.
No. Those two came to mind as we were talking, but my third choice was going to be Mickey Mouse, simply because I wanted all of Disney and I wanted the parks and like. But then I was like, all right, I gotta shit all over his choices, so I went like Jack Sparrow. That's a Disney character. What are we doing with kids?
Yeah, you see, you're giving me crap, but you were going straight cartoon.
I was going to go like off like full violate all principles and just market to kids. So that's note to self, don't do that. Note to public listening, don't do that as well. Note to my daughter, like don't listen, unsubscribe. Everyone else, hit the like button, hit subscribe, follow us on social media. So I guess then my third pick, which would be 5th overall, third and final, right? We're doing 3 picks.
I was only doing 2, but I can come up with one on the fly that I'm sure you'll make.
I feel like you came up with the other 2 on the fly. So, so I wanted to balance it up with like fictional because I didn't have anyone fictional in mind. I was going to go Mickey Mouse simply for, again, broad appeal. I'm not a big fan, like not my cup of tea, but I know there's a good, like very loyal following. And I could go one of 2 directions with this. Again, completely fictional. I'm going to go Homer Simpson.
Yeah.
Again, fictional character, so I wanted to lead into that, get someone on my team that has that sort of that background or that character. But also, again, I feel like staying power, cuts across generations. Also, the Simpsons tend to be good predictors if I'm right on the memes that I see every once in a while where like someone dies in the Simpsons episode and then all of a sudden like 20 years later that person actually like a lot can come true with the Simpsons prediction. So if I get in there, I was going to go between Bart and Homer. I landed on Homer simply for the age demographic. So
nicely done. I like how you worked through that and got there. And you have I'm not even going to say that. It's so lame. No, Homer Simpson. There it is. Pick number 5. And I'm gonna be honest with you. I only thought we were doing 2 picks. So I don't have anybody.
All right. Well, then you can go with my other choice was going to be like a superhero, like a Superman or like an Iron Man.
Oh no! Oh, what am I talking about? That's a terrible idea. First of all, I already had my fictional character. I got it. this should have been first overall. I would actually say this pick trumps Oprah.
Ooh, uh-oh. Trumps. Where are we
You're
going with this?
You're
We're going to get us canceled.
you're gonna hit me with the kids thing again. I know you are, but like, just with the 6th overall pick, give me Taylor Swift. Swifty.
Wow. Yeah. Does she
Just
smoke weed?
does she smoke weed? Just an army of insane.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. If she's
You put Taylor Swift up against Oprah, like
I'm taking Taylor there. See,
it feels kind of feels like a purge situation here.
I feel like I got the steal of the draft at number 6, going with T Swifty.
That is definitely the Tom Brady pick of this draft for sure.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Well
Superstar.
done. Also took you some. I mean, you might have lost your job before you got to the 6th pick, but
Oh yeah, I would definitely have been fired by the owner for those first 2. I don't know. I shouldn't even say that. Marshawn Lynch is my guy. Jack Sparrow bringing the Disney brand. I think you're underestimating the strength of my roster here.
yeah.
Yeah. Well,
That's that we should probably prepare more before next episode, and then I think let's see how it plays out. If Oprah gets into the game, or if Pope Francis, comes around on Cannabis, then
we'll see. Can we come up with like a visual graphic that we can throw up for like the 3 people that actually listen to? They can vote on.
Sure, we can put something out. Yeah, so check out our Instagram at the Hybrid Pod, and we'll throw up a poll on whose draft was better. So I'll obviously have to log in and get my burner accounts going, and then we can we'll do some interactives. And it's not like I'm busy enough as it is. I could totally, throw together some content for you. Happy to do it.
I just need you make sure the infographic that you create, you send it to me for approval.
Sure. Do that. Like I didn't do the Snoop Dogg one, and I just threw it up.
You tricked me. Yeah. I'm a co-host.
Yeah, I remember that.
Shit, we're having Snoop Dogg on.
Yeah, or I think the text I got back was like, yeah, as long as we tell them at some point that it's April Fool's. I'm like, read the caption.
Yeah, didn't make it.
Literally read the caption. We did fool a few people. Which also tells me though, thank you to the few people that actually did subscribe to our socials and fell for it. So
were they excited for Snoop Dogg, or were they just surprised that?
I got a few that was like, when is this happening? And then a few that were like, oh my God, Shawn, like, really? So, yeah, definitely. Also check the calendar, and, no, he's not yet. We're also accepting sponsors, like and follow, subscribe, all those good things. This episode brought to you by,
Disney.
Disney on Ice. Get in the holiday spirit with a Disney cruise.
All right.
Fun for the whole family.
All right.
Squarespace.
Look, I had fun with that one. That was good. We'll have to bring something similar back next time, but let's move on. Thank God. Let's do the trivia segment. I think it's something that we're going to be aiming to do every episode. Again, I think Shawn did a good job explaining the point is not to stump one another, although I'm sure I will be stumped plenty. Not the best when it comes to trivia. Although I will also point to the scoreboard here. It's 1-0 Erik. So
yeah, but Oprah's on the field now, so
screwed against Oprah.
That Swifty at the end. I should have stopped it too. I shouldn't have given you a Swifty.
Yeah.
But all right. So it is 1-0 in favor of Erik. Which again, it's a long season. Long season will be fine. So should I go first with my question then? Given that, or is this like golf rules where you scored better on the last hole, so you were on the tee first? How do we want to handle this? In light of the Masters, of course, which by the way, the leaderboard.
In light of the Masters, in light of the my first round of golf is this Sunday. I love that.
There we go. Okay.
Yeah, excited for it. Let's go with the golf rules. So since I'm up, I'll ask my trivia question first. And Shawn, you need to be more nice to me. I felt bad about stumping you with a fairly easy question last time, so I made it even easier this time. So, in 2013, what federal agency issued a memo to states about how to roll out cannabis programs without getting in trouble from the federal government? And who authored that memo?
That memo was offered by my dear friend, former Assistant Attorney General of the United States. I don't know if that was his exact title, so I apologize if I've mislabeled him. Jim Cole of the Department of Justice. Jim Cole is a real person. His name is not Cole Memo. And yeah, it was a Cole Memo out of DOJ and was just with Jim Cole last week. So
nicely done. Oh, you were with Jim Cole last week?
Yeah.
Down in DC?
Down in DC. So he sends his regards. Friend of the pod.
Absolutely. We should have drafted Jim Cole. Yeah, that's funny because last time, I don't know if it was the last time I was down in DC, like my one Jim Cole story, the person, not the memo, was I don't remember what the event was, but at an event down in DC, going to a dinner, Jim Cole was like the guest of honor. So of course I'm like psyched. I'm like, oh, I'm going to get to meet Jim Cole. Like he's kind of like this mythological creature to early cannabis regulators.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I'm so excited. It was a big dinner, probably like 40 or 50 people. And beforehand, there was a cocktail hour, which was being hosted by actually one of my clients. Shout out to CRB Monitor. So I'm like having a few beers, getting loose, ready for the dinner. And
Sounds
then
very professional. Nice.
and then I see the seating arrangement, and I am literally sitting next to Jim Cole. Instantaneously dump the beer out.
Yeah, sobered right up.
Done drinking.
Sit up straight.
Holy shit! But what a cool experience that like get to sit next to the guy.
He's a real guy.
Hear his stories. Like people were asking him pretty pointed questions, and he was just bringing you to the day it happened. Who was in the? It was just incredible experience.
But it makes you wonder sometimes, like the bureaucracy of things, right? Like I've always joked that I didn't go to law school to regulate cannabis, but the door opened and I took it, and I'm glad I did. Very grateful that I did. Makes you wonder about like his own trajectory and things of like, did you ever imagine that you'd be world famous for a memo, by the way, which has since been rescinded and is no longer in effect, but spiritually it lives on.
Yeah.
It just, those of you that are thinking about public service, are in public service for a career, let that just be a good reminder to you that you never know when an opportunity will present itself to leave your mark on something. So I'm sure Jim Cole, when assigned the task, could have never imagined just how famous or infamous, depending on your perspective, he would become. So, but he's a good guy, down to earth, and again, I've had the pleasure of meeting him a handful of times, and just he's an average guy, and that is a compliment. He's a good guy.
So, Department of Justice, Jim Cole, nicely done, Shawn.
Also, 2-part questions. Wow, what if I got one wrong, one right?
It would have been wrong.
All right, Erik, an 18-part trivia question.
Make the rules up on the fly. That's right.
Spell photosynthesis. So this question, this might stump you. What was the first medical condition for which cannabis was prescribed in the United States before federal prohibition?
Can you repeat the question?
What was the first medical condition for which cannabis was widely prescribed in the U.S. before federal prohibition?
For federal prohibition. Oh, scurvy.
I feel a scoreboard evening out. That's what I feel.
Well,
do you want to phone a friend? I can give you Jim Cole's number if you want.
Yeah,
he probably knows.
My heart is saying witch.
Definitely go with scurvy. Yeah.
If you're a witch.
Sure. Shout out Salem. Shout out Salem, Massachusetts. Sure. Yeah. That's just, let's careful where you go next.
Oh man. Okay. This is tummy troubles.
Ooh, good guess.
Because I'm thinking if it could be a lot of things that would fall into the tummy troubles category. So I'm
Yes,
just
the,
gonna go
the
out there with
pre-Pepto-Bismol cannabis.
I'm gonna go tummy troubles.
That would be incorrect. The
Ah.
correct answer is migraines. Migraines.
Headaches.
And it was prescribed for migraines during the late 19th century, before the Marijuana Tax Act of 1937. So my theory on offering that question was the theme of the day is medical cannabis. So
Yes.
let that be proof that medical cannabis is by no means a new phenomenon. And I think many folks, especially when they build out their dispensaries, are paying homage to the days where cannabis was prescribed, probably next to heroin and other substances. That there is a very deep history in this country of cannabis legalization, but also cannabis as medicine. So migraines was the correct answer. Scoreboard
1-1.
1-1. So not upset about that. And yeah, so actually, therefore, looks like I'm up first next time to ask the question.
Oh, you got the tee.
Based on our golf rules. Yeah. So
yeah, next time I'll be able to let you know how I'm hitting it. I'm so excited to get out and play.
Cannabis is it's a social drug, social consumption. So enjoy it on your golf courses up in Maine with your caregiver model.
That's cute.
That's what I'm here for. That's what I'm here for. Vacation land, everybody.
Vacation land. I used to actually tell a joke about, well, we're not going to go there. We're not going to talk about my past life as a comedian. All right. So
it's a different podcast.
Yeah, it is a different podcast.
Where do we go from here, Erik? What's next? What do our listeners have to look forward to?
I think we just continue the conversation. I think you let us know on social media. Let us know via text. Let us know. My mom.
You hear that, Mom?
Yep.
You hear that?
She'll let us know where we should go next with it. But we want to know where we should go with this. If we want to talk more in general, if we should get more into a detailed conversation around a specific issue, maybe get into some current events. Although cannabis right now seems to be in a little bit of lull. Is that just me?
Well, it's not a tariff, right? So I think that's the news cycle seems to be a bit. I don't know about you. I'm suffering from some whiplash when it comes to the news.
Yeah.
I would say cannabis. It depends on your perspective. I think cannabis markets are in a tough spot, and a lot of people have put a lot of hopes in some form of federal movement that just hasn't come to fruition. So, lull maybe, not a lot of like, you're seeing some chipping away. I think I'd love to maybe talk about sort of the emergence of hemp and the sort of the collision between hemp and cannabis. We talked about how medical plants are not medical plants or adult use plants. I would say that hemp and marijuana are one plant. So you're seeing a lot of news in Texas about that, and in other jurisdictions where they're looking to ban certain elements of hemp. So there's some news, just a matter of maybe the lane you're in, or sort of the headlines you're monitoring.
That's gonna be a long episode. I got some thoughts around that. I'm happy to share.
Yeah,
we should have a guest too. Spice it up.
So that's the other thing is we are always on the lookout, and I think we wanted to get this thing off the ground a little bit, and I think we've successfully done that. This now being episode 2. We look forward to having episodes 3, 4, and 5 coming up. We don't yet have, I think, a cadence or a pace to this per se. A lot of it is schedule dependent, and I don't know if anyone's noticed, but Erik is rocking some equipment now, so welcome to the club.
I was on a text chain of some high school friends that made fun of me, so I quickly bought the mic and the headset.
I think that was an investment, a wise investment for sure.
Shout out Bangor High School.
That's I'm glad that they gave you the grief that you deserved. But yeah, I think we want to have guests. We want to be interactive. We want to talk about things that are relevant to listeners. This is not an industry podcast. This is not a regulatory podcast. This is meant to just be a conversation that is informative, hopefully, but also engaging and relevant. And so we'll try to add some segments that might be interesting. We reserve the right to flop totally on those segments as well, because odds are not every joke lands, not everything hits, but all the same, yeah, this has been fun, and I'm glad that we've got the chance to continue doing this, but we definitely want to have guests. We want to have topics that are important, and who knows, maybe we'll do some more drafts and other things in the future.
Hell yeah.
What else is coming up? What do we have we have 420 coming up. What's up? We have Mother's Day coming up. I don't know if you know that, by the way. Heads up.
We could do yeah.
Heads up to you, especially now that you know. Write that down.
Write that down. So,
you want to land this bird?
Yeah. Thanks for listening. Great conversation with my good friend Shawn Collins here. We appreciate you coming on, giving us a little bit of time in your day to listen. And onward and upward.
Wow. There it is, everybody.
Plan landed.
You didn't ask AI to generate a close, did you? All right, everybody. Until next time, thanks again for listening. Be sure to like and follow and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And we'll see you soon. Thanks, guys.
See ya.
Yeah. The hybrid. Yeah. The hybrid. Yeah. The hybrid.